Hello madam and classmates, we are from FOB Group 7. We are doing case study 6 and the title is No More General Chose a Threat to Knowledge Recombination.
The selected case study is about ethnic migrants working as American workforce. The migrant workers are also called H-1B, which means non-immigrants work visa that allow U.S. employers to hire foreign worker that require bachelor degree or equivalent. Because of this, there are arguments that these migrant workers are taking away jobs from Americans or create jobs by bringing new skills to companies. A migrant from India, Chowdhury, disagrees with that and argues that debate is too narrow. Chowdhury stands with his opinion that we should see the moves from these immigrant workers as carrier of knowledge that could be recombined with locals. It includes the transmission of information by one individual or group and the acceptance of information given by another individual or group.
Due to how easy the knowledges are transferred, explicit knowledge is more readily transferred through structured or formal processes, sometimes involving technology or information systems. Meanwhile, tacit knowledge is more difficult to transfer, and to measure or quantify. The transfer of tacit knowledge requires a great amount of effort and personal interaction by all parties involved.
Than any country in the world, the United States has more immigrants. The population of immigrants is also very diverse. In 2018, roughly 11.2 million immigrants living in the U.S. were from Mexico. The next largest origin groups were those from China and India.
During the same period, the overall U.S. workforce grew, as did the number of U.S.-born workers and lawful immigrant workers. Immigrants are predicted to control the future growth in the U.S. working-age population through at least 2035.
As the baby boomer generation going into retirement phase, immigrants and their children are expected to increase the amount of the working-age population by adding about 18 million people of working age between 15 and 35. As an example of knowledge transfer, Fernando, who is from a small agricultural community in Mexico called Heredia. Fernando is seeking adventure and decided to migrate to the United States, Georgia. In United States, Fernando found a master carpenter that is willing to teach him as a student. Through observation and informal on-the-job learning, Fernando became a skilled craftsman. After 4 years of working under the supervision of his mentor, he successfully launched his own woodworking business in Mexico. Fernando brought together all his new technical and social skills acquired in the U.S. labor market to educate his employees and engrave a new niche in the local Mexican economy. Skills and knowledge obtained in the United States and transferred to Mexico by Fernando are English language, social, and technical skills.
The main issues that have been discussed in the case study is codification and recombination of knowledge across borders. The main purpose of this article is to share the interesting phenomenon that ethnic migrants bring a lot of knowledge and innovation from their hometown, knowledge that can further combine with local inventors.
The authors found that migrants can play an important role to host firms by transferring their knowledge previously locked within the cultural context of their home regions. In the early 1990s, Dr. Coley met Dr. S.K. Doss, a plastic surgeon who is about to amputate the leg of a patient with a wound that would not heal due to restenosis, a gap between two blood vessels. Dr. Hari P. Coley stopped him and suggested that they try the turmeric to heal the wound. Finally, they found that way effective and filed first patent for the medical use of the herb. The example given clearly illustrates the role of ethnic migrants to the West Country by transferring and codifying knowledge of Indian medicinal herbs. From the view of Chowdhury, he thinks that migrants can benefit the Western country and help the local citizens to improve their quality of life. Unfortunately, some of them think narrowly that the presence of migrants can be taken away by displacing American workers. Academics have still fiercely debated the effect of migrants, whether they create the jobs by bringing the new skills and knowledge or take away their citizens' jobs. If H-1B visas were scrapped or stopped admitting skilled migrants, it would be a recombination loss for Western countries due to the lack of knowledge production. The problems that may delay the process of transmitting the knowledge from one country to another is uncertainty for all involved about whether knowledge from one region will work in a new context. Some of the knowledge might be considered as unproven in a certain ethnic or country because that knowledge is codified in a different language. In the case of traditional Indian medicine, the Western country is hard to access knowledge that is codified in Sanskrit textbooks. Researchers of Western countries might be skeptical about such knowledge because there are a lack of clinical trials proving the effectiveness of treatment. Herbal medicine could be prevented in the Western climatic environment, and uncertainty with this knowledge could delay the knowledge transfer. Another problem in this case study is that knowledge carried by migrants is often tacit in nature. Tacit knowledge is difficult to manage and share abroad because that knowledge always resides in the mind of people over time. Some of the tacit knowledge consists of specialized techniques that have not necessarily been written down and need to be transferred by the experts who hold it. That allows people to define, structure, retain and share knowledge or experiences within an organization. It can help in making effective decision-making and also foster innovation in an organization. According to the problem of codification and recombination of knowledge across borders, our group believes that there are many benefits to the compilation and reorganization of cross-border knowledge. The new ideas generated by combining the knowledge brought by ethnic immigration with the original knowledge can solve the problem well. If every country does not allow skilled immigrants to enter, over time, this may lead to a decline in the country's innovation capabilities, and as immigrants go to other countries, global competitiveness may be lost. For the issue that unsure whether knowledge from a region will work in a new environment, and knowledge carried by migrants is often tacit in nature. It can be analyzed and solved through the integrated knowledge management cycle and knowledge management. The integrated knowledge management cycle includes three main stages. The first is the capture or creation of knowledge. When people decide on a new way of doing things or develop proprietary technology, knowledge is generated. Sometimes it is necessary to introduce external knowledge. Therefore, when they are not sure whether the knowledge of a region can play a role in the new environment, people can use the existing case study, or use the existing knowledge to try to combine the two kinds of knowledge. For example, using old tacit knowledge cases to solve new cases by comparing existing cases with old cases, so as to make a correct diagnosis for a specific patient. The second is knowledge sharing and dissemination. This can be used to solve the hidden problem that the knowledge carried by immigrants is essentially a hidden problem. Knowledge sharing is the exchange of information, skills or professional knowledge within or between people or organizations. Communication is an interactive process of communicating the knowledge of the target audience so that it can be used to cause change. Prithviraj Chowdhury and Duyun Kim provide a typical example in the case study. Dr. Hari P. Kohli suggested that SK try to use turmeric to heal wounds. Knowledge must be provided in a useful form to anyone in the organization who needs it, no matter when and where. The third is acquisition and application. In the transition process from knowledge acquisition and creation to knowledge sharing and dissemination, the content of knowledge is evaluated, and then the knowledge is contextualized for acquisition and application. This stage is then fed back to the first stage to repeatedly update the knowledge content. For this reason, these two issues can be solved more perfectly. In solving the second problem, we can also use the second method to solve it, which is to use Nonaka-Amp, Takeuchi knowledge spiral model. Since the knowledge in the Nonaka-Amp, Takeuchi knowledge spiral model theory is a large group knowledge, it is easy to transform and mobilize from implicit to explicit. In the ontological dimension, knowledge is easy to transfer and share among individuals, groups and organizations. There are four modes of knowledge transformation in this theory, SISI. In the first, socialization. From the case study, we have identified that knowledge recombination and sharing is important to factor today for maintaining a skilled and also well-trained workforce. It is undeniable that some of the world's leading companies have embraced knowledge sharing in these recent years. While there are clear benefits and advantages, there are also many reasons that prevent companies from getting started. Here are some recommendations or suggestions to solve the issues. The first recommendation to solve these problems for every country or local firm is to establish an open-door policy. Without an atmosphere of trust, the company will not communicate openly. Immigrants should be able to feel as if they can ask questions or find information to anyone in the country at any time. Employees or immigrants should be free to do so without being judged for asking questions or saying they don't know. This is an opportunity for immigrants in the local firms to share their knowledge and education instead of humiliating the person asking the question. When the questioners are supported and understood, they become more likely to share their skills and knowledge when the opportunity is given. Secondly, in order to solve the compilation and reorganization of cross-border knowledge, the telephone is not as cheap as it is now. In the past few years, the use of Voice over Internet Protocol, VoIP, has reduced the cost of long-distance calls. For a long time, local countries that have been trying to establish business contacts are particularly interested in reducing the cost of calls. When the use of VoIP began to flourish in the United States, expats were able to interact with Asians more frequently. As the cost of telecommunications has decreased, information exchange has begun to become more intensive. In addition, in order to resolve the uncertainty of all relevant personnel about whether the knowledge of an area will play a role in the new environment when people are faced with the uncertainty of knowledge related to complex environmental issues, it may be important to develop an action plan based on the precautionary principle. This principle stipulates that if there are signs that an activity may be harmful to humans or the environment, the activity should be abandoned. The development of an action plan requires coordination and integration of the skills of the constituents. The full task pedagogy starts with the simplest but most authentic case that professionals or immigrant countries may encounter in the real world. In addition to the uncertainty related to the content, the knowledge uncertainty of the experience may also be due to the ambiguity and complexity of the procedures or tasks. In other words, if the description is not clear enough or the immigration has not been effectively carried out. In addition, actively encourage knowledge reorganization and sharing. Continuing to address the knowledge carried by immigration is usually the default. A country or local company can create an environment centered on continuous learning. The first task is to get their team to focus on collecting and recording tacit knowledge as a matter of course. We can use 3 stages to evaluate the comprehensiveness, digestibility and applicability of tacit knowledge. The national or local company should also consider any knowledge-related questions, comments or feedback received from your immigration partner. Similarly, they can view the performance of immigration partners and individual employees to understand areas for improvement. The goal here is to identify 2 key knowledge and skill gaps within the organization, which can be filled by recording the tacit knowledge gap in the knowledge base, and again with tacit knowledge files. Reward immigrant partners who share knowledge. Since they know that working in a knowledge-sharing culture is not for everyone, try to encourage immigrant partners to speak up or share with their team what they find online or their expertise in their home country. The purpose of case studies is to understand how the reorganization of different types of knowledge changes as immigrants bring innovations from their hometowns, and local inventors often use this as a basis. The inventor's patent application experience represents different types of knowledge. This kind of experience may not exist for new inventors who are specialized in technology or obtained through invention activities in related or unrelated fields. The summary of our case study have revealed cultural differences in the relevance of knowledge and technological progress, but over time, the generally expected changes in different sources of knowledge are obvious. Although the relevance of different types of knowledge in the stage is consistent with the proposed model extension in most cases, there are significant deviations. Some deviations can be attributed to the nature of culture. For example, immigrant workers are also known as H-1B, which means non-immigrant work visas that allow U.S. employers to hire foreign workers who require a bachelor's degree or equivalent. Because of this, some people believe that these immigrant workers are taking jobs from Americans or creating jobs by bringing new skills to companies. On the other hand, the Integrated Knowledge Management Cycle and Nonaka-Takeuchi Knowledge Spiral model can be used to explain this case study. Acquisition or creation of knowledge to solve the problem of uncertainty about whether the knowledge from a region will play a role in the new environment. Knowledge is generated when people decide on new ways of doing things or develop proprietary technology. Sometimes it is necessary to introduce external knowledge. For example, using old tacit knowledge cases to solve new cases by comparing existing cases with old cases, so as to make a correct diagnosis for a specific patient. Besides that, Nonaka-Takeuchi knowledge spiral model can be used to solve the knowledge carried by the immigrants or inherently recessive problems. First, encourage people to share tacit knowledge face-to-face in informal social communication and demonstration teaching. Second, Tacit knowledge is transformed into knowledge that is easier to understand so that others can use it. Third, knowledge is compiled into broader entities and concepts. Finally, people transform explicit knowledge into tacit knowledge, go back to the first step, and continue to spread it.